your host, Joy Ravella, and welcome to another episode on the Everyday Joy podcast. Today's one is super practical. Let's get into it.
Take care of God's needy people and welcome strangers into your home. That's from Romans 12, verse 13 in the CEV version.
Today on the Everyday Joy podcast, I have got the amazing Ash. Ash, how you going?
I'm good. Good to be here.
Are you someone who loves having people over or just like doing lots of hospitable sort of things?
It is my favorite thing ever. I'm such an extrovert, and I just, if I could be around and near, like in touching distance of people 24/7, I would be happy. I would be a happy gal.
And some people are listening. Maybe you're listening to the podcast right now and you're thinking, nope.
It's the worst.
Nope. Work from home is the biggest blessing.
It's so true. It's so true.
Well, this verse talks about something that we all have varied responses to, right? Some of us love spending time with people. Some of us just have this amazing gift of serving and being hospitable, and some of us just really don't. But what I think, for me, my first impression of this verse is that it's not really so much about us and where we sit and how we feel about it. This verse is talking about kind of calling us to a course of action that honors God, taking care of God's needy people, welcoming strangers into your home. Whether or not you find that exciting, this verse doesn't really give you much wiggle room. It just emphasizes that this is something we need to be doing as followers of Christ.
It's so true. I think what you said hits the nail on the head perfectly. It's a call to action. I think, I think so often as Christians, we have the best intentions. We know what God wants us to do. We know that He wants us to help people. We know that He wants us to bring people in. But so often in the busyness of life, in the fact that everything's so expensive these days, I feel like we can almost always find an excuse to not take that step and take action to the things that we know we're called to do.
Yeah, and so today we're going to talk about it.
Exactly.
We're going to talk about the power of inviting someone needy into your home.
So
and
true.
I'm going to share a little bit of my own story, Ash, a bit later on.
Amazing.
Right now, though, what does this verse tell you about who God is or what matters to Him?
I think that the main thing that jumps out to me is exactly what you were saying before. It's not about us. The idea isn't that we need something. It's about serving other people. And I had this quote written down from one of my pastors, and it says, it's not about my life being transformed by Jesus. It's that others' lives would be transformed too and at the dinner table. Ooh. So that came from a message that she shared, and I really think that is just what this verse is saying, and what God's explaining about His character is He wants us to be transformed, but He wants us to gather people, bring them to our table, bring them into our communities and circles, and allow their lives to be transformed as well.
Yeah. And that's such a powerful picture, right? About the table, the dinner table. There's something about food and people coming together that really just, it breaks down barriers.
So true.
That going out to eat at a restaurant or hanging at a cafe for a cup of coffee just can't quite do. There's something really powerful in that. And in the lead up to Easter, Jesus celebrated Passover with His disciples, and they were all around the table. And you think about the conversations, you think about the gravity of that situation, and you bring it into your own world, your own life. Some of the best conversations I've had with my family, some of the best times I've had with people coming over to our place has been around food.
It's so true.
Been around people coming over.
Yeah. I know that I've experienced the most amazing people who have pulled me in. And as you said, particularly at the dinner table, or pulled me into moments of community. And there's this thing, and I don't know if you've heard about it before, but we call it sacred hospitality. And sacred hospitality is basically the idea that when you bring people in and you have dinner with them and you are hospitable to them, it's actually an opportunity for us to connect them with Jesus, for us to connect them with their God, because that's who Jesus is. He is a serving God. He is a servant-hearted Lord. And I think that I've felt the most cherished, the most seen, and the most loved when someone has called me out, invited me for a meal, invited me for something that they didn't have to, but they wanted to serve me to show me that I was loved.
Yeah, it's such a powerful thing and something we don't really do these days. I think a part of it maybe has to do with the self-conscious nature of having someone come over to your home, to your space, to see all the mess there, and then it's the stress of cleaning up, it's the stress of what do I cook, and it's so much easier just to say, hey, let's go out somewhere together. And yes, I'm saying that that's an awesome option as well, but we're also talking on the show today about the power of the dinner table, of inviting strangers into your home, into your space. It speaks volumes. I love that word, that term, sacred hospitality. Because it truly is something sacred when you are the person who's feeling lonely and distant. Now, I had a season in my life when I was just the most awkward preteen. Man, I was awkward. I just won't even go into it. I had so much self-doubt, and I never fit in, ever. Like, I just really struggled. I didn't feel good in my own skin. And I remember there was this amazing woman who was the pastor's wife of the small church we went to in Auckland. I don't know if she's listening, but her name, I called her Mrs. Huffman. And she would always invite me over after church just to hang out with the kids and the youth group and those sorts of things. We used to do it in their garage, and I remember every single time I went over to a place, there was homemade iced tea in the fridge.
So good.
There was the smell of baking. There was always food on the table, and it was just this idea of the countertop, really, that you can just take the food as you walk around. You can just pick something up. There's iced tea in the fridge. You are welcome here. And I remember really just being so impacted by that. It really was such a sacred thing, because at that time in my life, I didn't have a full understanding, and I probably never will, but I had much less of an understanding of who God was. And so when she was serving me, when she was looking after me, when she was giving me something to eat and drink and saying, hey, come over to our house, and extending that invitation bit by bit, it made me realize that maybe that's what Jesus is like. And that if he was here, he would do the same thing with me, that he would include me, that he'd make me feel like I'm welcomed. And bit by bit, over time, I came out of my shell. I could feel more comfortable around them. And it was just the most beautiful experience. And even to this day, my goal is to have a house as warm and as open as Mrs. Huffman. And she could have easily ignored me. I was a preteen kid. I'm no one special. I don't come with any special sort of gifts and talents. I was just this really awkward, in the background kid who needed someone to notice them. It just made such a difference.
Wow. I think it's so true. When you're invited somewhere, and when you are serving, and when you get served to, it really does build up the body of God. It really does, because it encourages other people to do the same. I don't know if you've ever been invited out to dinner somewhere, and the minute you do that, you're like, let's do that again. I need to invite people over. It's contagious. It's so contagious. And so I almost think that out of today, if you can take anything, if you can take a single thing, it will be go on your phone, make a group chat, invite people. Maybe they've never been to your home before. Maybe it's the first time. Maybe you've only met them recently. I would encourage you, invite them, have sacred hospitality, connect them with the God that loves them through the way you serve them. And I think that you will not only see amazing relationships and friendships form, but you will see people come to Jesus.
Ash said earlier on the episode, I have never felt more seen, more cherished, and more loved when someone has invited me over for a meal and wanted to serve me. And I think that that is such a powerful way for you to show love on someone. And you don't need to ambush them with the gospel message. You don't need to have a meticulous plan for having them come over. Your house doesn't need to be spotless. The food can be ordered in. Honestly, it doesn't have to be super fancy. I think we definitely set ourselves up to have a certain kind of air we put on when people come over, but it doesn't have to be that way. I know that being on the receiving end, if someone served me burnt toast and gave me a bit of jam on the side, but prepared it with love and invited me over with love and treated me with love, that burnt toast would have felt like a Sunday roast. In all honesty, there is something powerful about inviting people into your home, showing them love, showing them Jesus's love. And that's what I want to focus on with today's application. When was the last time you invited someone around to your place? Maybe you're flatting, maybe you don't have a place of your own. Well, when was the last time you invited someone over just to enjoy a cup of tea in your space, sitting on your porch or in your bedroom or something like that? How can you live out Romans 12:13? Take care of God's needy people and welcome strangers into your home. Now, I know that I don't need to put this clause in, but I will anyway. Be wise as well with who you choose to invite into your home. Use your discretion, pray about it, but also be open to the new. Maybe the new person at your church, the new person at your workplace, the new person who you've always gotten along with, but that extra step of inviting them into your home has, I don't know, it's never quite eventuated. Maybe it seems too personal. Maybe it seems a step too far. But pray about it. See what God has to say. And honestly, inviting someone around for a meal. Oh, what a way to cherish, love, and see someone. What a way to show Jesus's heart. Well, that wraps up today's episode on the Everyday Joy podcast. I honestly can't wait to hear and see how the choice you make with inviting someone over leads to a chain reaction of events. God always does amazing things when we take that first step. I look forward to catching up with you tomorrow, again, right here on the Everyday Joy podcast.